Last week my microphone disintegrated when I picked it up, so being a little ginger here today. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Dayton. I'm Reverend C.C. Coltrane, and if this is your first time with us, we extend a special welcome to you, and thank you for spending your morning with us. We're different than many spiritual places that you might have run across, so if you have any questions at the end of the hour, please don't hesitate to ask me or anyone wearing the teal or white stoles. We are happy to answer any questions you might have. Because here at Center for Spiritual Living, our mission is to be a community of love that supports everyone in transformation, real transformation, spiritual transformation. So this morning, Stephanie Stewart is going to offer our reading and invocation, and our vigil holder is Linda. Everyone's different this morning. Our vigil holder is Linda Andriaco, and Stephanie and Andy will offer our interfaith candle lighting, which we do simply to remind ourselves that there are many, many, many sources of wisdom in the world that we can use right now, even though they may be thousands of years old. They're still applicable to us in our lives today. The kids are with Carol today. There's Carol in the back.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Children, do we have any?
Yeah, eventually.
Okay. All right, good. She's going to head to the back to the youth area so that she can have a good time with whatever kids decide to show up. A couple of really quick announcements. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I just want to remind you that on Wednesday nights we have a spiritual discussion service that begins at 7 p.m. It's called A New Story of Our Time, and it's about telling a new story about our own lives, but also about this world we live in. We took a break over the holidays, but we're starting up again this Wednesday at 7 p.m., so we hope to see you there. We also have 2 classes coming up in January, which may be bumped to around February 1st. But anyway, those classes are 5 Gifts of an Abundant Life and the Power of Your Word. Both of those will jumpstart you in ways you might not ever expect. So take advantage of the opportunity and sign up for one of them. And there's a whole bunch happening. If you look at your bulletin insert, and all these multicolored, beautiful flyers, you'll see there's something happening just about every week. And our practitioners are here after the service to spend a moment in a little bit of seeing spiritual truth with you if there's something in your life that you're struggling with. Any of the people with the white or teal stoles on will be happy to do that with you. It's their gift to you on Sundays. So now it's time for some more music. Song in My Soul is the name of this tune. Karen Drucker? Yep. Woohoo! Get it.
We light the first candle to honor Christianity. What a person plants, they will harvest. One who plants selfishness, ignoring the needs of others, harvests a crop of weeds. We light the second candle to honor Taoism. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. We light the third candle to honor Judaism. There is one respect in which each of us has precisely the same strength as Moses, namely the strength to choose. There is no hand of heaven, no physiological, genetic, psychological, or providential compulsion that forces us to act one way rather than another. We light the fourth candle to honor Buddhism. Irrigators channel waters. Fletchers straighten arrows. Carpenters bend wood. The wise master themselves. We light the fifth candle to honor Islam. O my servants, it is only your deeds that I record for you and then recompense for you. So let one who finds good praise Allah, and let one who finds other than good blame no one but themselves. We light the sixth candle to honor the spirituality of the Navajo. Be careful when speaking. You create the world around you with your words. And we light the final candle to honor Hinduism. The wind is blowing. Those vessels whose sails are unfurled catch it and go forward on their way. But those which have their sails furled do not catch the wind. Is that the fault of the wind? Today's reading comes from Brian Thompson. When you are honest with yourself, speaking the truth cleanses you of anger, sadness, hatred, desire, envy, and greed. The pain of your inner denials weakens you. When your self-reflection is honest, it exposes all of the lies that you've told yourself and that you've been resisting. Once confronted, your negative emotions have nowhere to run, and they can finally begin to heal. Everything yields to honesty. Let's take these words into some silence for a few moments of contemplation. So centered here in this place of peace and safety, wisdom and love, I know that the one that is all wisdom, that is all compassion, that is all safety is here as well. In us, as us, around us, is the one that many call God. And so I know that today this service is absolutely perfect, absolutely as it should be. Reverend Cece is a divine conduit for a message that we each receive, that our resistance falls away to reveal truth, compassion, and love. And for that, and all things that transpire today, I am deeply grateful. And so it is.
So Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We have a brand new bunch of opportunities, right? 365 possibilities to make the world a better place. I'm pretty excited about 2019, but maybe that's because I just had 10 days off to recover from last year, right? This year, our global organization, Centers for Spiritual Living, has chosen for its theme spirituality in action. That means, how we live our spirituality rather than just how we do it inside our own heads. And we'll have monthly topics, including Seeking the Common Good, which is next month, which was my team, and Building Integrity, Respecting Other Nations and Peoples, Planetary Stewardship, and a whole bunch more. There were about 55 Centers for Spiritual Living ministers who were involved in creating and fleshing out this theme of spirituality in action. And so I wanted to start this month with the notion of taking ownership of our own lives, taking charge of our own minds, taking charge of becoming conscious of what's going on in here. Sometimes we're not very conscious of what's going on in here at all. And but that's where we find our opportunity to choose. And so I think it's really easy to forget, particularly in times like these, that we're in control of our internal environment. It's really easy to figure that stuff out there, whether it's the news or other people or the state of our world, that's in charge. And it's even easy for me, who's been doing this for 35 years, our philosophy, it's easy for me to lose sight of that deep truth that reminds me that I'm in charge of my perception, that I'm in control of my state of being based on where I focus my consciousness. And one of the things that happened while I was off was that I sort of just fell into this really funky place of forgetting this truth that I'm the one who gets to decide what my internal environment is all about. And I had to get real honest with myself about that, because I think that's where everything begins, is in being honest with ourselves about what's going on. And I love today's reading, especially that last sentence. Everything yields to honesty. Everything yields to honesty. Because I think unless and until we're honest with ourselves about everything, how do we get around to changing our perception? How do we get around to changing the way we think and our beliefs and our views on the world, how do we ever create the life we say we want if we aren't honest about what's happening? I'm not sure we can even know how we want to change until we know what there is to change. And that requires honesty. And I think the life that we want, or we all say we want, depends on continuing honesty with ourselves and with others. Because I don't know about you, but yes, I do know about you, because we're all people, right? Whenever I catch myself being less than honest, it feels kind of creepy, right? It just doesn't feel like the life, it doesn't have the peace and the joy that I want to live in. It feels kind of creepy. And so we're required to continuously be honest about where we are in life and what we're doing. I also love the way, Brian Thompson, by the way, is a mindfulness teacher and a blogger. That's where I ran across that quote for today. And I love the way he points out that a life based in honesty leads to cleansing from anger and sadness and hatred and greed and all those things that show up when we're not paying attention. The lies that we tell ourselves, he says, have nowhere to run if we bring them into our awareness. And everything yields to that kind of honesty. Everything begins to heal. I ran across a wonderful story at a website called themoth.org.
Oh, the best.
Isn't that a great site? Yeah. It's dedicated to people telling their stories. It's a wonderful story. And it was about a woman who was writing about how her life was 20 years earlier. She was a practicing drug addict. And she and her baby son were living with the baby's dad, who was also a practicing drug addict. And their lives were pretty bad because addiction, right? It's not a good place to live. And so she's talking about this one night where her partner was out scouring the street for the needed supplies. And she was in withdrawal, and she said, I knew that he would score, but he wouldn't share. And so she wanted to leave, but her baby son was sleeping in the room next door. A couple of years earlier, this woman's mother had written to her and sent her a phone number of a person she claimed was a Christian counselor, and the mom just said, maybe this person can talk to you if you ever want to. Well, about 2 a.m., during this terrifically long, horrible evening that she described as a continuous panic attack, she dialed the number that her mother had sent. And there was a pretty sleepy voice on the other end of the line that said, hello. And she said, I got this number from my mom, and I wonder if you could talk to me. And the guy said, well, sure. And then you could sort of hear him pulling up the sheets and sitting upright in bed. And she just started to talk. She started to talk in half-truths, quarter-truths maybe, about how her life was sort of messed up. And, my boyfriend, I really love him, and I don't want to hear you say anything against him. And then eventually it comes out that, he tried to push her out of the car when it was going 60 miles an hour, and that he'd thrown her and her son out in the cold and locked the door, and on and on and on. And the man on the other side of on the other end of the line didn't say a word of judgment. He simply listened and listened and listened. And then finally she started to spill the truth. Like, my life is a mess. I'm an active addict. Here's what I've done to try to get high. Here's the abuse I've endured. And the man just stayed on the phone with her until the sun came up. And she said to him, you're really good at this. Do you think I should read some Bible verses? And he sort of hemmed and hawed and chuckled. And she persisted. She said, I mean it. You've really helped me. How long have you been a counselor? And he said, right now I need you just to not hang up. That number you dialed? It was a wrong number. She'd been talking to a perfect stranger all night. But she didn't hang up. She didn't hang up. She kept talking to this poor guy that she'd waked up at 2 in the morning and kept up all night. And while she didn't get her life in order that day, she turned a giant corner that day because he had provided her the opportunity to get honest with herself without any judgment. She went on and got clean and sober and raised this amazing son who graduated from Princeton University with honors the year she gave this talk. She went on to have a life that was really worth living because everything yields to honesty. It's a wonderful story, and most of us don't have secrets that are anywhere near that big, an active addiction and an abusive relationship. But we all have secrets. We all have things we don't want to admit to ourselves about ourselves. For sure, we all have things we don't want anybody else to know. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's part of being human. We all have secrets. And we have secrets about ourselves that we repress. We really, really try to avoid, and we deny them, and we think nobody else knows. But they don't stay hidden. Because when we repress and deny things about ourselves, they come out to play when we're at our lowest, when we're tired, when we're angry, when we're upset, when we're hungry, when we're in despair. Those things show themselves. Other people may know them before we do. But everything will yield to honesty. Everything. So how do we get honest about these things that we either deny or try and hide or just flat out lie to ourselves about? How do we create that non-judgmental listening space for ourselves? There are a couple of ways that I think work. There are lots of ways that work, but I'm going to talk about this couple today. One is to find someone who will listen to us so openly and so non-judgmentally that we can speak ourselves into our deeper truth. We can hear ourselves into our deeper truth. And that's one of the things, I don't recommend just calling somebody up at 2 a.m. because you might not get that friendly, wonderful reception on the other end. But a good friend, someone who loves us enough not to judge us, can do that for us. Our small groups are designed to give a place that's space enough, a place that is safe enough to be able to lean into that truth about ourselves. A good counselor can do that. Another thing that can do it is a practice for ourselves of mindful meditation. The whole point of mindfulness is to simply see, not do anything about, not judge, not holler about, simply see what's present. And when we start to learn to focus our minds on our breath, and that's where we keep the busyness of the mind focused, then what starts to happen is we start to see all the thoughts that are trying to drag us away from that focus. And they are weird. The thoughts that are constantly streaming through our minds are weird. They are. And you start to see them and you just go, wow, where did that come from? What is that all about? But the point of mindfulness is to just let them go and say, wow, this is weird. This is weird. And as we continue to create that mindful space in our own consciousness, we start to see deeper and deeper and deeper. Like we get down to the little nasty judgments that we make and our fears and our anxieties, and we simply acknowledge their presence. That's all honesty requires of us, is to acknowledge their presence. And we all have them because it's part of being human. I heard somebody say that spirituality is the quest to relieve the mind of the frailties and liabilities of the brain. I love that, because the brain is built in such a way that it must compare, it must contrast, it must judge. It's just how it's made, because it all comes from our biological predecessors who had to be able to judge whether something was safe or not, like that. And we still judge everything that way, although it's gotten a little warped. Because it's like, I don't like the music here, and so I'm judging it bad. Or I don't like the way that person looks, so I'm judging them as other. That was never what I don't think nature intended, but we have this brain that just does stuff. And so if we can just acknowledge that it's doing that, and that's all, then all that stuff begins to heal itself. We start to see how it's not necessary to judge somebody on the way that they look to keep us safe, right? It's not necessary. If we simply acknowledge the presence of these things in our minds, then the transformation begins. Because when we become honest enough to admit, yeah, my thinking is filled with judgment. Yeah, sometimes I'm petty and mean. Yeah, sometimes I'm selfish and sad. The spell of denial is broken. And as we continue, we see deeper and deeper and deeper, because that's all what being fully human means, right? I don't know any human being, not even the Dalai Lama, and he will admit it, who doesn't have those little less than holy thoughts. We all have them. We all have them. And it's okay. It's okay. So we just let them be. We just create a space where it's safe for them to be. And where we say, oh yeah, that's there. And more and more starts to come up to be healed. To be healed simply because we allow it. We own it. We admit it. We let ourselves be fully human in it. No human being, like I say, is without these kinds of thoughts. We can also find out where we're not being honest by looking very clearly at our own lives. Like, what am I experiencing, and how far away is it from what I'd like to experience? The difference is where we're not being honest, right? Because we perceive as we are. We create as we are. We experience as we are. And so if we want to experience something else, what we have to do is see where we are and who we are in that. And that's what I sort of went through over the holidays. I was suffering. I was depressed and isolated, and I got stuck in the suffering. And as we and many other people say, our experience is determined by the contents of our consciousness. As the Buddha discovered, being human means sometimes we feel pain. He went out of this very sheltered existence and met old age and sickness and poverty and death, and said, there is pain in being human. That is inevitable. Being human means we will run into some pain in our lifetime. I don't know about you, but my body is not 25 anymore and able to withstand anything I throw at it. And sometimes that's painful. But the suffering we do to ourselves. It's where we focus our consciousness that determines whether we suffer. I've heard it called the suffering of suffering. Because we suffer a little bit of pain, and then, boy, by God, we relive it. And again and again and again, and we embellish it, and we bring it back up and look at it, and we hold it close, and we suffer from it. We suffer the suffering of suffering. We get into this loop of unpleasantness, and we can choose to stop that loop. We can choose to feel the pain of being human. We can choose to acknowledge it as the pain of being human, and then we can choose to let it go. Those things that are mentioned in today's reading, the anger and the greed and the envy and the desire and the deep lasting sadness, that is the suffering of suffering. But if we just acknowledge it and feel it and then don't hold on to it, don't let it be something that we have to get revenge for or beat ourselves up with, then it doesn't build up and overwhelm us. And when we start to bring the truth about ourselves into our consciousness, then we realize that part of being human is to simply allow human pain to be felt and then go. To be felt and then go. We are responsible for meeting pain, the pain of being human, with an open heart, and we're responsible for what comes afterwards. What do we choose to do afterwards? Do we loop the suffering until, it ruins us? If not, if we just let it go, then the pain goes and the joy comes. And then the joy goes and the pain comes. And then the pain goes and the joy comes. That's how it is. If we're trying desperately to always avoid any feeling of pain, that's an invitation for the pain to set up a little loop and stay until we acknowledge it. It creates suffering. But I came to this realization because what I was feeling was the pain of the world, and I thought, if I can take an action to alleviate any of this pain right now, I should just do it and shut up. If I can't, why am I sitting here suffering? What's up? If we can do that, if we can take an action, we do. And if not, why do we continue to focus on the pain? It's far more powerful and far more honest, instead of suffering, to create a space of possibility, the possibility of change. That pain, the thing that's bringing that pain, will change, and it can change. And if I allow it to change, it will. I know that there are lots and lots and lots of ways to help us become more honest with ourselves. Sometimes I have to ask another person to tell me what I'm doing that I can't see myself. Like, how am I acting that's impacting you that maybe I'm not seeing? And then I have to be willing to listen. That's the hard part. When someone says, let me tell you. Oh, sorry, I asked. Sometimes I just have to sit quietly and sort of look at my behavior or my words and how it appears to me other people have responded to them. Because maybe I said something really stupid and hurt somebody's feelings without meaning to. Sometimes I will see myself in pages of a book, or the words of a poem, or a verse of scripture. That's what scripture's really all about, is how am I walking this spiritual path? And am I showing up like wise like Moses? Or am I showing up, having to fight with every angel that comes my way? How am I doing this? The important thing, I think, is that once we decide to be honest with ourselves, once we decide to speak the truth to ourselves and the truth to others, we just stop resisting. We stop resisting life. We start to heal. The negative emotions become far less powerful and less rooted in us because we're not playing them over and over and over. And the room for joy and the possibilities for becoming expands, because everything yields to this kind of honesty. There's nothing in us that can stand in the face of our simply looking at it and saying, yes, this is what's here. Yes, this is what I did. Now I forgive myself. I allow myself a space of possibility and I move on. Everything yields to that kind of honesty. So join me now in just a moment of contemplation and self-awareness. Just let your awareness sink into your own being. See if you can find that place within you that is the place of balance. Deep within your being there is a place of peace and stillness. Sometimes to me it looks like a reflecting pool, reflecting the beautiful open sky. Other times it's simply a quiet place. But there is a place within each one of us that is at peace. And when we sit in that place, we know ourselves to be of the universe. We know ourselves to be part of this great whole. Some call God, some call universal intelligence, some call creation, some call creativity, some call Great Spirit. It is the very life energy of the universe. It is that energy which somehow, mysteriously, brought into being all that exists, and yet is continuing to make new, out at the edges of the universe, making new space and new time and new forms. It is that conscious intelligence that allowed these amazing bodies we live in to develop, to evolve, to show up in all their magnificent complexity. It is that glue that holds it all together, that sometimes we call love, sometimes we call spirit, sometimes we call consciousness. It is a place of creativity and joy and wonder. And it lives right here at the center of each one of us. Because we are of it, there's nothing else we could be. We are part of this thing called universe. We are part of this thing called spirit. We are the place it shows up as us. Each of us a unique and precious and absolutely essential embodiment of that thing called universe. So in this moment, I simply know that each one of us says yes to that deep honesty that allows us to keep nothing hidden from ourselves, and also allows us to hold whatever is there in such love that it is healed, that there is in us made room for more joy, more celebration, more creativity, more community, more love, as we simply allow all that we are to be, as we simply accept it, allow it, welcome it, as we no longer hold on to any part of it or shun any part of it. Those things in us that do not serve us are healed. And then our very presence brings joy to those around us. Then our very presence allows others to see themselves in a different light, in a light of love, in a light of healing, in a light of joy. So it is simply this honesty with self and others that heals us, that brings us home to ourselves. So I simply know we say yes to this. Yes as never before. And in that yes, we are healed, we are loved, we are whole, we are well. And so I simply say thank you. And so it is.
That was such a beautiful, thank you, Kenny. I am just a friend, a simple friend in this glorious web of life. We are all just drops within a stream, flowing towards an ocean
This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one.
Yes, yes, amen. We now have an opportunity to contribute to our community, and as Stephanie so brilliantly realized last week, that when we make a contribution to the community, we're really making it to ourselves and to each other, because this community exists of all of you. We come together to support each other in transformation and to be love together. And so I invite you to look around at your fellow community members and bring into mind or into hand, into your mind or heart if you give electronically as I do, but also into your hands, your contribution. And as you look at your fellows, say to them, I make this contribution for me. Let's do that. Repeat that after me. I make this contribution for me. I make this contribution for you.
I make this contribution for you.
We are community.
We are community.
And together we move forward.
And together we move forward.
And so it is. Amen. There it is, there it is. Woo. So I would like to speak a word to our volunteers and just say thank you. And just remind you that the volunteer log is over at the Welcome Center. I think you got an email about it. If not, wander over to the Welcome Center and take a look at it. And I want to say thanks to everybody who made this day possible, including all of you, the ushers and greeters, the practitioners, the welcome team, the band. Yes. I'll tell you what, everywhere I go, I come back and think, oh, we have such good music. I'm so grateful for it. I really appreciate you guys. And all of you, thanks for being here. Let's close for our let's stand for our closing affirmation. And a closing song, which is Stand. But first, please repeat after me. Everything yields to honesty.
Everything yields to honesty.
I am willing to be honest with myself.
I am willing to be honest with myself.
I am willing to be honest with others.
I am willing to be honest with others.
The healing has begun.
The healing has begun.
And so it is.